Yesterday at BMO Field in Toronto, an international friendly between the Canadians and the Ecuadorians. There was drama, but there was no goal scoring. Ali Ahmed sent off the pitch 5 minutes in. He left his studs up near the Ecuadorian player's nostril and was wondering then why he was given his marching orders. Maybe you understand how I see that particular altercation, but let's get some thoughts from Gareth Wheeler and Alexander Gange-Ruzic. Obviously, there's a lot to get into, a lot of meat on this bone. The goals are still dry for both nations who are particularly unhappy with their offense. You could spin it though, Alex, and say, look, Canada was playing with 10 men for 85 minutes and drew one of the top footballing nations in the world. When you look back on yesterday's performance, what do you think of?
Yeah, I think of the adjustment going down to 10, because I think that's a small but important detail in all of this, is that the last time they went down to 10, which can happen at World Cups, which can happen when, it depends on the referee, depends on the occasion. Maybe you get a bit too riled up. They did not look good against Guatemala. They got, they went down well up a goal and just kind of fell apart and ended up losing that game in pretty spectacular fashion on penalties. To see them adjust, to see them learn, those sorts of details are important, because at the end of the day, this journey to the World Cup, it's about learning from what's happening to you right now. The big learning we'd like to see going forward is, yes, can they score goals? Can they figure out what's going on with the attack? But considering that this friendly, immediately the value of it diminished by 50%, 100% as soon as this red card happened, the fact that they reacted, they got a draw, that sort of result could pay off in a knockout match where you get this game to penalties and you give yourself a chance. Or if it's the last group stage game and you need a point to get out, you grind it out. That sort of thing goes a long way. So I think the character, that was a big one. I think the resolve, but still some things to figure out, goals, attack. But all of a sudden this Venezuela game got a little more important in terms of that stuff, I think.
Yeah, and that was my big takeaway, just that. Last time they went down to 10 men, they were chaotic. There wasn't a plan, and they played within their structure, and the commitment from the players was admirable. Like, that's what you take away from it. Again, this is football. Like, whether you agree or disagree with a call, a sending off is a realistic outcome. And I'm sorry, no matter what you or how you felt about the moment where Ali Ahmed was sent off, if inevitably that play went to VAR, I don't think they're changing that call. Like, it was just a reckless challenge. I understand the frustration if you hit a player in the arm and he grabs his chest. I understand how that looks, but it was a dangerous challenge in that moment. And I'm sorry, it's not the first time nor the last time I've seen that in the game where a referee will send off a player in that moment. And guess what? Football, by nature, is unpredictable, and you need to adjust to any moment. So this whole notion that the game was ruined is just nonsense. There was something to get out of it. I think they showed some character. I think they showed some defensive mettle. They really frustrated in Ecuador's side. They didn't change in terms of their demeanor. So all of these things are things that they can use as reference points in case this happens in a World Cup. And guess what? Many of these Canadian players play on an edge. I think that come the World Cup, it's really going to matter what kind of referee you have on the day. A more lenient one probably suits Canada, but they tiptoe that line and they play a very physical, combative brand of football. So this could very well happen next summer. And the fact that now you have a good reference point playing against a good team, I think there is really something to be gained from this.
Alex, I think I started the show by offering my thoughts. I don't know that it's a clear-cut red card, but I've always taken the approach of you play silly games, you win silly prizes. Gareth seems to be on my side, but there is a big camp that doesn't think that was a red. Where do you sit on the issue?
Yeah, well, I think the question we have here is, did he deserve to be sent off? Okay, deserve feels harsh, but ultimately when you look at the criteria for a red card, I know there's, questions of force and intent and all that, but ultimately it was reckless. And as soon as you're reckless, there's always a chance. So it was one that I couldn't really argue. It's one where I think if it's given as a yellow, maybe it's because we're conditioned to CONCACAF, CONMEBOL, and maybe that's part of the reasoning we're seeing that, come on, it's Canada, Ecuador. Usually, and if this is 30th minute and this game's in Quito, that's a yellow. That's the worry, the consistency, but ultimately it was a bit reckless from Ali Ahmed. I don't think that should be a stain on the player. I've seen the complete other, like people like, oh, he was reckless, this was dumb from him. I don't think that was the case either. It happens. You know, he's looking up, he's looking for a ball. By the time you react, you try to control it. it's too late, but it was reckless. And anytime you lose control of your body, these sorts of things can happen. So I think it was ultimately a learning lesson from all. And I've seen these given, and I didn't really have much of a complaint. Like Gareth says, VAR doesn't overturn it. I think that tells you everything you need to know. That argument wise, it's the famed orange card. It's one that goes either way. You got people on both sides debating.
Yeah. Let's put it this way, AGR. Like, if it was just a caution, I would have preferred that. I would have been okay with that as well, right? It's just, I've seen this happen so many times. It was, look, I mean, Manchester United fan, like Sir Alex Ferguson's final year in the Champions League. It was Manchester United, Real Madrid, I believe. And Nani brought his foot up high to bring down the ball, and a player ran into it. He was sent off in that moment. And I was livid at that time. So it just depends on what side of the aisle you stand on this. But like, it's not as if we haven't seen sending offs in a very similar matter happen on a regular basis. So look, I know it's a flashpoint. It's frustrating for everyone involved, but that's football. Those are the rules, and I don't think that the call was egregious.
So with that said, and the timing of the sending off, the match is really hard to analyze normally. I think you're both right in raising points about the resolve, the adjustment, and the fact that they held Ecuador to a clean sheet despite being down a man for basically the entire match. The thing I want to get to next, Gareth, is a point that you've made before, but I think we're seeing it again, and that is how BMO Field looks. It was very yellow. It was very blue. There was a lot of Ecuador support in a home match for Canada 7 months before the World Cup. We expect that in Toronto, of course. This is the melting pot, of course, of this nation, and in large parts of North America, one of the biggest ones at least. But when you consider how close we are to kicking off the World Cup, are you concerned that Canada might not have home field advantage when the World Cup does roll around?
Adam, I need to correct you. We're a cultural mosaic, okay?
It's a mosaic, not a melting pot, a mosaic.
The melting pot is our friends south of the border there.
Important distinction.
Yeah, I mean, what it felt like, other than the logistical nightmare of getting into BMO Field, and the lineups at the gates were crazy, like really bad. There's construction going on around the stadium and limited entrances. And then getting to the stadium in the first place when the Royal Winter Fair is going on, and Toronto traffic congestion, which is a massive, massive issue that they can't seem to rectify. So the game, I'm sure, was delayed. Like, the game didn't kick off till just about 7:50. There's no chance that was planned. I think they actually delayed kickoff because of the logistics. So hopefully come the World Cup, when construction comes to a halt, it's mandated by FIFA, and there's going to be different gates and approaches, and they'll open up the stadiums earlier. Hopefully none of this is an issue. But that was the other big takeaway of the night. I understand why Ecuadorian fans will come from far and wide to see their team play in a place like Toronto. If you're from upstate New York or elsewhere in the province or in Michigan, those fans deserve a lot of credit because they're willing to come from far and wide to go see the team where the nation that they've typically supported, where their heritage, where their family comes from. Like, there's something really admirable about it. I just wish the enthusiasm for Canada kind of match that, because the tickets are available for anyone to get. And if really the people that want to support Canada were desperate to go see Canada Ecuador on Thursday night at BMO Field, I mean, the tickets are there to be had. And not just that, it kind of felt like Canada had a nice little away section in a Ecuadorian home stadium. That worries me to a certain degree, 7 months out from a World Cup, because it very much feels like something that we experienced 7 or 17 years ago in terms of Canadian soccer. There'll be Canadian fans, no doubt, at these Canada World Cup games, but the ticket prices is one thing which will keep out a lot of the most vocal and hardcore fans. And on top of that, there are going to be people from other countries, other nations that are playing Canada. They're going to be desperate for a ticket, that are going to be willing to go above and beyond because they're that enthusiastic to see their team play against Canada. So typically when it's a home World Cup, there is a distinct home field advantage, especially with the feel, the atmosphere. What's it going to be like at the World Cup? Is it going to be Canada? Yeah, they have some good support. Canada needs great support heading into this World Cup. So it's not just about a cold November night at BMO Field. It's like next summer, depending on who Canada draws, there can be a very loud, outspoken, and influential section of fan base that might be supporting the other team. I think that Canadian fans, not that they're not doing their best, we need to be louder, we need to be more organized, and there needs to be strength in numbers. It's a very difficult ask at these outrageous ticket prices and how there has not been a beneficial policy for Canadians actually packing these stadiums, which I have a real problem with the way that FIFA did the allocation of tickets this year. So it does concern me to a certain degree because these players need the backing. They need any tangible advantage they can have to hopefully make next summer's World Cup that more of a success. So it was noticeable last night. The Ecuador chants shook the building, and the Canadian response was okay. And I'm not saying that to diminish any Canadian supporter. There are plenty of them. But as time goes on and much changes in Canadian soccer, a lot still ends up staying the same.
And Alex, is the West Coast-based guy, you're on the other side of the Rockies than I am, but it's far to get to Toronto. It's probably cheaper in this country to fly to Quito or to Guayaquil and watch a match at a away viewing party there than it is to travel in this country. We understand the logistics. There are a myriad of reasons why it's challenging for the Canadian supporter when so many of these matches are at BMO. But the question remains about home field advantage. You will hopefully be able to be at a lot of the matches, Canada or otherwise, at BC Place with some media accreditations. But when you look across the stadium, are you expecting it to be 50-50? Are you expecting Canada to feel like, yeah, we're playing at home and we can ride the momentum of this crowd?
For the World Cup, I think it'll be a different sample size. Granted, it's one we don't have a whole lot of sample, right? I think the only precedent is 2015, and to 2015's credit, when Canada played at BC Place and across Canada, it was very pro Canada for that Women's World Cup.
Women's football is different, though.
But that's why again, I don't have the proper sample size to look at. What I will say about Canadians, and I think what happened yesterday is more of a general problem. For whatever reason, people have to get up for these games, and in their eyes, friendlies, CONCACAF games, they don't have that same credence. Because for me, I do think of Canada-Jamaica 2022. That was a huge game. That was built up as a huge game. Canada wins. They go to the World Cup. And to people's credit, that was a sold-out crowd, and it was almost entirely Canadian in that moment. And Jamaica is one of the teams with the biggest diasporas in Toronto.
Jamaica was out though at that time. They weren't playing for anything. So
which is true and a good point to consider. But at the same time, I think Canadians, they get up for certain things more than friendlies, CONCACAF. And I think in this case, Ecuador is a great example. Tickets were pretty reasonable from what I saw. It was a good time. Canadians had every chance to go out. But for them, I saw a lot of sentiment of, oh, why would I travel? There's the World Cup next year. Let me save money. Very valid, very smart people. There's others maybe they already went to Cote d'Ivoire. Maybe they already went to Ukraine. There's also a bit of fatigue. It's just friendlies. Like you mentioned, it's different if you're an Ecuadorian. When else am I going to see my team in Canada maybe next year at the World Cup? But there is that certain chance of, well, next summer I'm not seeing them for $40, $50 or whatever it was last night. I think there's a bunch of factors to consider. So I think for the World Cup, it will be better just because so many Canadians have kind of resigned to the fact that, okay, it's a big event. I'm going to pony up. I'm going to be there. But it's still a big concern that there always needs to be that certain carrot, right? Like it's never just, oh, it's Canada, let me go. It's always, oh, it's a friendly, oh, it's Curacao. There's always an excuse. And the least, if we can get rid of those excuses, and I think then it could be a different story.
But we can also fairly say it matters more to them than it does to us. We aspire to be like them. After the game last night, the second team, the players that didn't play, had a training session on the field, and the place was packed. People stayed in. They're cheer. It honestly felt like the Ecuador second team doing training after the game were like the Beatles. It was crazy. They were like a hype boy band. We're not there as a footballing nation, and I'm sorry, we hire all these marketing companies to try to come up with these ideas to get people on board. And with all due respect, Sidney Crosby and Shawn Mendes or whatever music artist they throw out there coming up with a song is not going to create that authentic fandom and that enthusiasm that the Ecuadorian fans showed post-match last night. We are just not there. We want to be there. I think we're taking great strides to be there. We need more home games. We need more of an attachment. We need less controversy and divisive elements. We need all these things. I get that. But I think, like, I'm not even like coming down hard on what we experienced last night because I'm used to it. I just think that it's a little bit of a warning sign of what things could be like 7 months from now. That's my bigger takeaway than anything else.
Okay, Alex, you know what else this team needs? Goals. They need some goals. It's been a hot minute since we've seen a Canadian score for this men's national team. Jesse Marsch rolls out Jonathan David. Of course, he is the guy to play regardless of the role and whether you think it's getting the best out of him. He's going to be in the starting 11. Taniela Wishai starts beside him or around him. I guess it depends on your semantics on how you look at it. But alas, he was the other forward chosen to complement Joe David. And he had a golden opportunity shortly after the red card. He doesn't get it. And suddenly Twitter and social media and the discourse around the pitch is suddenly, that should have been promised David. That should have been X, Y, or Z. The bottom line is that Canada is not getting the goal-scoring production, the offensive production that they need. What's your level of concern? Are you getting there? Are you currently concerned about the offense? Because Venezuela is just a few days away.
Yeah, I think there's normal to have a level of worry because the numbers speak for themselves. That's 3 games without a goal, period. Nothing, not even a penalty, not even a header off a corner. Even then you look at the last game, the 1-0 where they did score was a free kick, kind of a, not to say it was a fantastic effort from Derek Cornelius, but those aren't the sort of efforts you're expecting Canada to regularly get, is what I'm going at. Yes. So you have to go all the way back to Romania. Nico Seeger putting one in the top corner for the last time they scored in open play. That is a worry because it's not as if this team, it's funny because you look at Ecuador on the other side. It's something bonkers. Like this was their 6th 0-0 under their coach in 14 games or something ridiculous. But you look at their attack, it's like, okay, they have a 36-year-old striker playing in Liga MX. You got a bunch of youngsters who aren't really that proven. Like I'm looking at this Canadian team. You've got the all-time top scorer, Jonathan David. You got a Taniela Wishai who's contracted to a La Liga club. You got Tajon Buchanan who scores a lot for a winger. You got Ali Ahmed who's maybe more of a setup man, but he's still got a lot of assists this year. Then you got Promise David, Theo. Like there's options. There's players there who can help create goals. It's just the balance hasn't been there. And Promise David is a big discussion point, I think, just because we haven't seen a lot of him in the Canadian shirt. And you see the highlights every week. You watch him play in Belgium and he's scoring these sort of goals where you wonder, what could you bring? Taniela Wishai is really the interesting one for me because Jesse Marsch said it this week. In his eyes, he's the front runner at the number 9. And then you look at the chance he doesn't take yesterday. It's a bit of a tough situation because would anyone else in this Canadian striker pool get that chance? No, except maybe Theo Bair. But the reality is Taniela Wishai, he gets in these chances that other players don't get. But if he's not finishing them, at a certain point, what do you sacrifice what he brought defensively? And by the way, he got pushed out to the wing yesterday and he won, I think, 7 out of 13 duels. Or 11 duels. He was really good defensively. But at the end of the day, you do need goals. You do need production from your strikers. So I think for Canada, it's a worry. And they have to start looking at solutions. Like with Promise David, I get why fans are clamoring because it'd be nice just to see him, to at least see what does it look like, the trade-off you might not have defensively versus what you might get in terms of goals.
He's just not playing at all. It was surprising to me that he didn't come off the bench. Instead, Marsch turned to Theo Bair even. And it's a difficult game. You don't want to look too much into the substitutes with 10 men in a game like that. But is a message being sent? Like this is the second time in the last four games for Canada that Promise David hasn't been available, and yet he hasn't come onto the field. I mean, he has 2 goals in 7 games played, but he just has 2 starts. And his first start in the 45 minutes against Ukraine was really, really bright. Oluwaseyi has to score that. I understand why Marsh, a lot of people, myself even, like Tani Oluwaseyi. He's a very good player. But there's no denying the goal scoring record with Canada is nowhere near where it needs to be. 2-20. 2-20, guys. Like Kyle Larin gets absolutely ripped by a segment of the Canadian fans for, I think he is 1-20. So 2-20, like that is really poor. He has to finish that chance. And I think the biggest issue, I'll disagree with you a little bit, AGR. The one player that I think gets to that ball and creates more than anyone playing that higher role is Jonathan David.
That's fair.
He's the guy. It's not just about not seeing promise, David. What about the other David? Like, I think that him playing deep. Last night, we barely saw Jonathan David touch the ball. Going down to 10 men didn't help. He did so much running off the ball and defending. You want your best players on the ball, or at least, at the very least, when they're not getting touches in a position where they can impact the game. And I think that potentially his role with Canada might be affecting his role with his club side Juventus and vice versa, because he hasn't looked as sharp inside the box for Juventus as well. Play him where he is at his best. Jonathan David is your best player, and I understand the logic of trying to put him and play him in a deeper role, but where he is best is leading the line for Canada. That is the change I would make. And we've clamored for a little bit of a rethink, how this maybe attack looks, how this front four, front three looks, and there has been no invention. Jesse Marsh brings a lot of things to the table in managing the Canadian men's national team. You know, bringing like a tactical or technical blueprint to the attack, and creating these maybe more in-game, and I'm speaking outside the press, but creating situations where this team naturally is a better attacking side. That is not his strength. That is not his forte. And I think the way that he's using his strikers right now may not be in the best interest of this team moving forward. That's not to say that things can't change. We just simply haven't seen it. And I think that that's where they need to get back to basics. And these are my thoughts before last game. All we learned about from being 10 men down is Oluwaseyi needs to finish that chance. And is there someone else that could perhaps provide that little more quality when those moments may be limited come the World Cup? And that's what we need to be looking at right now.